You may proceed when you're ready, Mr. Brown.
Thank you, Judge. Ms. Romero, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Can you please state your name for the record?
Yes, my name is Pamela Romero.
And how do you spell your last name?
Romero.
Ms. Romero, currently, how are you employed?
I am the Learning and Development Specialist at West Liberty Foods, located in West Liberty, Iowa.
And what is West Liberty Foods?
It's a turkey process meat factory.
And how long have you worked for West Liberty Foods?
It's going to be 2 years in June 26th of this year.
Do you have any prior law enforcement experience?
Yes,
Can you please describe that for the jury?
yes. I graduated from Cedar Rapids Police Academy back in 2015. And I started working with the West Liberty Police Department for 2.5 years, later transferring to the Iowa City Police Department for 11 months. And I'm currently a part-timer with West Liberty Police Department.
So when would you have left law enforcement? Do you recall?
Yes, it was December of 2018.
And you live in West Liberty and now work there, correct?
Yes,
You have a family, is that right?
that is right.
You're married?
Yes,
How many children?
4,
All right. And their ages range?
20, 14, 10, and 14 months.
And were family reasons the chief reason that you went back to West Liberty to work there?
Family obligations.
Did you enjoy law enforcement?
Yes,
Do you hope to return to it full time at some point?
yes, I wish I could.
Okay. You're getting ready to move, is that right?
That is correct.
Where are you going?
Texas, 14 miles up north from Dallas.
Is this a transfer for your husband?
That is correct, yes.
All right. Ms. Romero, take you back to your law enforcement days. As a police officer with West Liberty and Iowa City, did you receive any specific training in interview techniques?
Yes, when I was with the West Liberty Police Department, they sent me to training back in December of 2016 for one of the CTK classes. And then I went back to the advanced class in February of 2017.
Okay, whenever you say CTK classes, is that the acronym for the officers that run the school?
Yes,
There are DCI agents, is that right?
that is correct, yes.
Specs.
All the time, informal and formal.
All right. And the same is true in Iowa City?
That is correct, yes, in Iowa City too.
Were you a patrol officer there?
Yes,
All right. Did you work any particular shift in Iowa City?
it was the night shift. I believe at that time I was working 7 p.m. to 7 a.m.
All right. Give us a bit of background on you. Do you speak Spanish?
Yes,
How would you characterize your fluency?
I am native speaker.
What do you mean by that?
I usually use my Spanish 90% on my daily routines. At work with my family, we even have a rule at home that we cannot speak English. It has to be Spanish.
Okay. So Spanish is your first language.
Yes,
Were you born here in the United States?
I was not.
Where were
I
you born?
was born in the north part of Mexico, Durango.
Okay, when did you immigrate to the United States?
Back in 1989, I was 10 years old.
Did you come here with your family?
Yes, to the small town of West Liberty, Iowa.
And did your parents work at the same food processing plant that you work at now?
Not my parents, but my brothers did.
When did you learn English?
I came here, I was enrolled in school I was enrolled in 5th grade, so I learned English in school till I graduated from West Liberty.
Did you go on to college?
Yes,
Where did you go to college?
William Penn University,
All right. And did you receive a degree?
my associates, yes.
And okay, an associate's in what area?
Science degrees. I was going into teaching, and then I just completed the 2 years.
Tell us again what the degree was in.
Science degree, just getting the basics out towards my teaching degree.
Did you go on to receive a 4-year degree?
No one.
In your duties at West Liberty and Iowa City as a police officer, were you frequently called on to interact with Spanish-speaking persons?
Yes,
Both suspects and witnesses, I would assume?
yes,
Did you have numerous occasions to interact with people in that way
yes,
in your law enforcement capacity?
yes.
All right. Ms. Romero, I want to direct your attention to July of 2018. Did you become aware of an investigation that was being conducted in Poweshiek County involving the disappearance of Mollie Tibbetts?
Yes, I was made aware.
Okay. And were you requested to assist law enforcement in speaking to potential Spanish-speaking witnesses?
Yes, the first time that I got involved, I was with the Iowa City Police Department, and they told me that they needed assistance with the Hispanic community for me to go ahead and do interviews in Spanish.
And how many days in July did you spend in Poweshiek County assisting in the investigation in that manner?
1 day.
Moving forward to August 20th of 2018, were you contacted by law enforcement in Poweshiek County to come to Montezuma to interview a person identified to you as Cristhian Rivera?
When I was contacted, I was not made aware that I was going to go ahead and interview Mr. Rivera. I was I had the idea that I was called down there to assist again with my Spanish-speaking skills.
Okay. And did you come to Montezuma then on August the 20th of 2018 for that purpose?
Yes,
At some point, were you told that you were needed to assist in the interview of the defendant?
yes.
When were you? I'm sorry, go ahead.
When I got there,
When you arrived in Montezuma?
yes.
And it may be obvious at this point, but why were you chosen to be the person to interview the defendant?
It was brought to the understanding that Mr. Rivera spoke Spanish, so me being a native speaker, it will be easier for me and him to communicate.
And were you briefed at the time by officers that were involved in the investigation as to what the facts were of the investigation to that point?
Yes, DCI agents and FBI agents.
At the time that you were requested to assist in the investigation, had the body of Mollie Tibbetts yet been located?
No,
Whenever you came to Montezuma, did you come with any other Iowa City police officer?
yes. At that time, I was traveling with Sergeant Fink.
Sorry, say that again.
Sergeant Fink.
F-I-N-K?
Yes.
And what is Sergeant Fink's first name? Is it Jeff?
Yes.
Sorry, that's okay. Whenever you left Iowa City, where was the first place you went to then in Poweshiek County?
We went to the sheriff's office in Poweshiek County.
Is that where you met with other officers that you just described?
Yes,
And you were briefed on the investigation at that point?
that is correct. Yes.
Was that the time when it was decided that you would attempt to interview the defendant, Cristhian Bahena Rivera?
Yes.
When was the first time that you met the defendant?
It was at that time he was sitting out in the lobby, and I was told by the DCI agents that he was out there. So I went out there to introduce myself. I told him who I was. Told him Officer Romero with Iowa City Police Department at the time, and told him, thank him for being there and for being patient, and to let him know that I was going to go ahead and be a few minutes for us to go ahead and bring him back.
So you went out initially and introduced yourself?
Yes,
Then you went back to where?
back to the room where the other agents were at.
Whenever you met the defendant the first time, was he with anybody else?
No,
Did he appear to have a cell phone at his disposal, at his use?
he had his cell phone in his hands.
Did he appear to be using it by your observation?
The motion that he had, he was leaning forward with the phone on his hand.
Where he was at in the sheriff's office at Poweshiek County in Montezuma, was that a secure area?
Yes, well, part of it, I'm guessing. I'm not really familiar with the area. So the part where I was at, it was not secure.
Okay, the lobby area where you met him,
Correct.
it would have been open to the general public?
Yes,
Okay. You do identify yourself as a police officer?
yes.
Were you wearing a uniform or badge or any type of insignia?
No, I was not wearing the uniform, but I did have my gun, which it's require when you carry, you have to have your badge with you. So I did have my badge, but it was on my belt. I don't think it was seen by Mr. Rivera.
After speaking with officers, after introducing yourself to the defendant, did you then go back out to the lobby to get him, to bring him back to attempt an interview?
Yes.
Was the defendant cooperative?
Yes, he was.
Where did you take him to be interviewed?
We took him to one of the back interview rooms. Again, where it was at, I'm not very familiar with the building myself. It was just an interview room.
Did you take his phone away from him?
No.
Were you pleasant with him
Yes,
in the manner that we're speaking here today?
I believe this is the same tone that I was using with him.
Whenever you showed him back to the interview room, did you point out the exits to him?
Yes, I made sure I knew where the exits were before I took him down. When we were walking down, it was myself and Mr. Rivera, and I show him there's the exit sign right there. That means that it's an exit door.
And the door, was there a door on the room that you conducted the interview in?
Yes, there was a door, which I showed to Mr. Rivera that the door was unlocked.
Did you tell him he could leave at any time?
Yes, I did.
Was he agreeable to speak with you?
Yes, he was.
So up until this point, what language were you speaking with the defendant?
Spanish.
Right. When the interview began shortly after, what language were you speaking with the defendant?
Spanish.
All right. And was the interview recorded?
Yes, it was.
Recorded by video
Yes.
and audio?
Yes.
If we were to sit and watch the video and audio of this recorded interview, would we see two people speaking in Spanish?
You will go ahead and see 3 people speaking Spanish.
Jeff
There
Fink
was
I'm sorry. go ahead.
Sergeant Jeff Fink, myself, and Mr. Rivera.
Did the defendant ever converse with you in English?
No.
So unless we understand Spanish, we're not going to understand the video interview by watching it, correct?
It will be difficult if you're not fluent in Spanish just because of the speed of the conversation.
We'd have to be fluent in Spanish in order to understand it, in your opinion?
In my opinion, yes.
Agent Romero, are you able to translate your conversation that you had with the defendant on the night of August 20th and morning of August 21st of 2018?
Yes.
Have you had an opportunity to review both video as well as transcripts prior to coming in here today?
Yes.
And do you recall the interview also from your own memory as to what was said during that interview?
Yes.
Prior to going into the interview, Agent Romero, you did not know the location of Mollie Tibbetts' body?
No.
Did you know that Mollie Tibbetts' body had been covered by corn leaves and was located in a cornfield? Did you have that knowledge before talking to Cristhian Bahena Rivera?
No.
Did you know or have any knowledge as to the injuries sustained by Mollie Tibbetts that caused her death?
No.
Did you have any knowledge as to Mollie Tibbetts' blood being located in the black Chevy Malibu? Did you have that knowledge?
No.
Because at that time, Mollie Tibbetts had not been recovered, correct?
That is correct.
And no blood had been found at that point in the black Chevy Malibu, correct?
Correct.
Because it had not been analyzed yet by the DCI.
Correct.
During your interview with Mr. Rivera, overall, how would you describe his demeanor?
He was friendly. We had a very friendly conversation. I thought so. We were very immersed in the conversation. I was making the questions. He was answering them. Very engaged.
Did he ever appear to not comprehend any question that you asked him?
No.
Did you ever not comprehend any answer that he gave?
No.
At the beginning of the interview, Ms. Romero, did you speak with the defendant about the vehicle that he drove?
Yes. At the beginning of the interview, I spoke to him about his work of employment, family history and the vehicles that he had, who he lived with in his residence, and just report building.
Okay, let's just speak specifically about the vehicle. We'll get
Okay.
into the other things, but
Okay.
did you talk to him about the vehicle that he drove?
Yes.
And what did he tell you about the vehicle that he drove?
He actually told me that he had two vehicles. One was a black Malibu, Chevy Malibu, that he had purchased from one of his cousins. I believe, if I do recall correctly, it was somewhere in Tama, a dealership, that he was making payments towards that car because the actual owner of that vehicle was his cousin. And then he also mentioned another vehicle, an Altima, that he stated that he usually drove in the gravel back roads of the town, because the information that he gave me is the reason why he did that is because the vehicle was not up to date with the registrations, the Altima. And the black Malibu, it was fine. So he was the one, he said that he drove that one around town.
During the interview with the defendant, did you allow him to keep his cell phone?
Yes.
Did you allow him to use his cell phone whenever he wanted to?
Yes.
All right. During the first part of the interview, you had mentioned earlier that you talked to him about his family.
Yes.
Did you talk to him about his job?
Yes.
What did he tell you about his family and his job?
He told me that he had been here 7 years in the United States, 4 years in Brooklyn, working in the farms that he stated that he was working at. He gave me information about cousins, uncles living in the close areas.
You had mentioned earlier that this was what you called rapport building.
Yes.
Is this something that you had been trained on with regard to conducting an interview?
Yes.
What's the purpose of rapport building?
Getting to know the person that you're talking to.
And during this part of the interview, were you able to get to know the defendant?
Yes.
Did you ask him where he was currently working?
Yes.
Where was that?
Jeremy Farms.
And did he tell you what his jobs were at Yerby Farms?
Yes, he did. He told me that when he started his employment with Jeremy Farms, he was milking cows. And later he told me that he moved to another position, that it was a lot easier, which it was cleaning the sections.
Before we move on to the next section of the interview, Ms. Romero, overall in this interview and interaction with the defendant, did you take frequent breaks?
Yes.
And do you know, on all of the interactions that you had with him, was it always you and Jeff Fink that were in the room, or were there times when one or the both of you would leave?
Okay, can you all hear me?
One of the other ones.
I'm back.
I was all the time with Mr. Rivera.
Did you provide him food?
Yes, I did. And the hours of the interview, I believe we gave him approximately 8 to 9 breaks.
And did you provide him a full meal at one point?
Yes, there was a sandwich, and I even asked what beverage was his preference, and I provided that to him.
And you allowed him time to eat that meal?
He had approximately 25 minutes to eat.
And again, was he always tracking questions that you were asking him?
Yes.
Did he appear sleepy to you at any time?
Yes, maybe towards the end. I mean, at the end of the interview, everybody was tired. I was also tired myself.
Okay. All right. After the initial part of the interview, did you then turn to whether or not the defendant knew or had seen Mollie Tibbetts?
Yes.
Do you recall how far into the interview with him, as far as time, that you raised Mollie Tibbetts for the first time?
Yes, I do not recall the exact time, but it was approximately an hour and 45 minutes into the interview.
And do you know if it was before or after he had had something to eat? Do you recall?
I do not recall.
Did you then begin to gather facts or attempt to gather facts about the defendant's possible knowledge of Mollie Tibbetts' disappearance?
Yes.
What does he initially say with regard to Mollie Tibbetts?
Mr. Rivera told me that he had no idea who she was, and she told me that he had never seen her.
Did you have a photo of Mollie Tibbetts that you showed the defendant?
At that time, I pulled out one of the posters, the flyers that had Mollie Tibbetts' face. I put it in front of the Mr. Rivera, and he looked at it, and he goes, "Yes, I have seen them around town. They are all over town." And at that point, he also added that he remembered seeing Mollie's boyfriend at one of the local gas stations.
But initially, he denied having ever known Mollie Tibbetts. Is that true?
That is true.
Or having any contact with her?
That is true. He stated he kept a picture of, or the copy of the poster flyer in his car.
At all points forward in the interview, Ms. Romero, sorry, have to wait for the switch. At all points forward in the interview, Ms. Romero, with the defendant, was your understanding that you were talking about the disappearance of Mollie Tibbetts with the defendant?
Yes.
And when you used the terms her or she, were you referring to Mollie Tibbetts?
Yes.
Was it your understanding that the defendant did the same?
Yes.
All right. Was there a time then, just after raising bringing in Mollie Tibbetts to the interview, was there a time during the interview that you then showed him a photo of a vehicle that was taken from surveillance in Brooklyn from the home of Logan Collins?
Yes. So I was provided with 3 pictures of a black vehicle that was obtained, I was told, by one of the DCI agents from the Logan Collins surveillance video. That photo showed the black Malibu.
And had you received those 3 photos at one of the breaks that you had taken during the interview?
Yes.
While you were at the Poweshiek County Sheriff's Office?
Yes.
Did you show those photos to Cristhian Bahena Rivera?
Yes, I did.
Hang on a second, sorry. It's how did you display them to him?
I was just gonna say that I laid them out in front of him, the 3 pictures together.
Okay.
I said, can you please look at them for me? He looked at them and his response was, yes, that is my car.
Did you even have to ask him if it was his car, or did he just volunteer that?
He volunteered to say that that was his car.
Were these were still shots taken from the surveillance camera? Is that right?
That is what I was told, yes.
Did it have a time and date stamp on it?
Yes, they did, which I pointed out to Mr. Rivera. He stated that, yes, it was 1948, the time, and July 18, the date.
Okay, so 1948 would be 7:48 p.m.
Yes, Army time.
And the date would have been July 18th.
Yes.
So that date and time stamp would have been on the photocopy of the photo that you showed him.
Yes.
Did you ask him if he was the sole owner of the Malibu?
I asked him if he was driving the vehicle that date and time. He said, yes, that was me. I asked him, is anyone else in the car with you at that time in that particular date? He goes, no, it was just me.
Were you aware at that point, Ms. Romero, that a runner had been seen on the surveillance video taken from Logan Collins' residence?
Yes, there was one of the pictures. It was shown that there was a person.
Okay. And did you point that out to the defendant?
Yes, I pointed out to the person that was running, and that's what I told Mr. Rivera. You see this person that is running? He said, yes, she was running.
Okay. So he used the term she?
Yes.
Okay. Now, the picture that you would have shown him would have been essentially a shadowed dot. Is that right?
That is right.
All right. Was there any way to tell in the photo that you used with the defendant if it was male or female?
No.
He used the term her?
Yes.
All right. Ms. Romero, at this point, did the defendant then describe seeing anyone running in Brooklyn at about that time on that date?
Yes, he went on describing that it was a female girl running.
Did he say at this point how many times he observed this female runner while in Brooklyn?
Mr. Rivera told me that he saw her 3 times. He saw her first, turn around, came back. He stated that she even waved at him and smiled. And then he went back, and that is when he continued doing what he was doing at that time.
What was it that he was supposedly doing in Brooklyn?
He stated that he was trying to find his way around town, that he was heading to his uncle's residence to obtain a vacuum cleaner.
So he told you that he saw a female running on
Yes.
3 different occasions. Did he ever place himself out on the county blacktop east of Brooklyn?
The way that Mr. Rivera described that first sight of the female was, it was in a paved road near a curve.
Did he ever indicate that he got out of his car or engaged her in any way?
Not at that particular time.
All right. So he never would have had any contact with Mollie Tibbetts other than, at least that's what he said, never had any contact with her other than seeing her.
At that time, yes.
After seeing her the last time, the third time, where did he say he went in Brooklyn?
Mr. Rivera told me that he lost track of her, that he lost sight of her, and continued on his way to pick up the vacuum cleaner.
Did he then say where he went?
Into town, I am guessing, because he told me that he was going to his uncle's residence, which it was in the trailer court inside Brooklyn.
Now, did you have a discussion with the defendant about the appearance of the runner, female runner that he saw?
Yes, I asked her what he thought of the female runner first, and his answer was, I found her attractive. I asked him what she was wearing. He said black shirts, maybe a top sport bra, and he continued describing. He did not say the name of it, but he just said one of those things that you put on to measure your steps or to hold your cell phone.
Or to what? Hold your cell phone?
The cell phone.
Okay. Did he ever use any other term other than attractive to describe the runner that he saw?
He stated at one point that he thought that she was hot.
All right. Ms. Romero, during this conversation, does the defendant ever admit to you that he had anything to do with harming Mollie Tibbetts?
Right at that time, he said no.
A break was taken after this discussion?
Yes.
During that break, was Cristhian Rivera placed into custody?
Yes.
All right. And did the interview then continue in the vehicle later on that morning?
Yes.
So later on in the morning at approximately 4:30 a.m., did you, Cristhian Bahena Rivera, and another officer leave the sheriff's office?
Yes. Officer Kiwi, an agent from FBI, and myself and Mr. Rivera left the office.
And where did you go?
We went to Mr. Rivera's residence and the farm that he worked at. I believe it was a property. Yes.
All right. That's an area in southeast of Brooklyn, correct?
I'm not familiar with the area, but yes, that's Powashik County.
Then did you proceed to a rural area in far eastern Powashik County?
We landed in a cornfield.
Okay, I'm going to show you a photo.
Okay.
States, it's the all right. Do you see States Exhibit 3 there on the screen, Ms. Romero?
Yes, I do.
This location that is on the map is 2478 460th Avenue. You see that?
Yes, I do.
What kind of road is that?
Gravel road.
All right. Is it, even for a rural county, is that area pretty rural?
Yes.
Okay.
It was a cornfield. It was cornfields all around us.
Okay. That's a good point. This is July or August of 2018, correct?
Yes.
So the corn is up, right?
Yes, it was August 21st already. Yes.
Right. So the corn is up and it is at least about head high. Would you agree?
Yes. The grass was pretty tall too.
The nearest town to where this location is that you went with Mr. Rivera, the defendant, is nearest the town of Guernsey. Is that right?
Yes.
And it's almost to the Iowa.
I don't know why I'm talking because I can sit here and talk. No, you didn't wake me from my slumber. I'm watching it. I just need to lie down. That's all. I'm still here.
All right. And in the vehicle, did you, were you in the vehicle with the defendant roadside at that location that we see here on Exhibit 3?
Yes.
Okay, we're going to look at it, Exhibit, I believe it's 25.
I
Exhibit
reckon she's a
25 is
perfectionist,
the
yes.
general area that
Sure.
would have been parked roadside with the defendant, Cristhian Bahena
Nothing
Rivera.
wrong with that.
Yes, that's where we were parked.
Okay. to the right on this photo, there is an opening to a cornfield. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Through that
Oh,
area.
this is going to be awful.
Mollie Tibbetts' body.
Dear.
Did you ever go out to the location of the body?
Yes.
And were other officers present at this location?
Yes, there were.
I'm actually
Which
popping my
direction
legs
are
out.
we
Well
looking here?
done.
We would be looking back
My
to
new
these, so
sheet's
that would be
dirty.
accurate.
That will be accurate.
Okay. And then exhibit number 26, if we can see that.
This
The
is
opening to
revolting.
that cornfield there is on the left on exhibit 26. Do you see that?
Yes.
And generally, is this area show where you were parked in the vehicle with the defendant?
Yes, we were close to that white vehicle.
Say that again.
We were like in front of that, where that white vehicle is right now, like in front of that. Like if those vehicles were not there then, but it was close to that area.
It's a little bit further up the road is what I'm hearing you say.
Yes,
And this is looking back to the west. Would that be true?
that will be true.
Was there any fence between the two posts or to cross into the cornfield?
No, there wasn't.
All right.
It's a mess.
Ms. Romero, whenever you got back into the vehicle, did you read the defendant his Miranda warnings?
Yes, I did. So inside the vehicle was Mr. Rivera, myself, and Sergeant Jeff. And
Did you waive those?
yes, he wanted to talk to me.
And did you then ask him what happened between he and Mollie Tibbetts?
I asked Mr. Rivera to give me all the details that he could remember since he approached Mollie Tibbetts.
All right. What was the first thing the defendant told you about seeing a female on July 18th of 2018 near Brooklyn, Iowa at or near 7:45 p.m.?
He told me he saw her running again 3 times. One of those times he parked his car behind her, ran after her or jogged after her, came close to her that she noticed him. She turns around, makes the attempt to use his cell phone to call the police. At this point, Mr. Rivera told me that he got angry and that is when they started fighting.
Okay. All right, let's break that apart just a bit. So the defendant on this occasion, this is while you were seated in the car roadside that we just saw, correct?
Yes,
He admits seeing Mollie Tibbetts,
yes,
and he indicates that he followed her.
yes,
Okay, whenever you say that he said that he followed her, did he indicate that he followed her in his car for a period?
yes.
Did he then tell you that he stopped his car
He said I parked my car, yes,
and he got out of his vehicle?
and I started jogging behind her.
Is there
Great.
another officer in the vehicle that you were in interviewing him that also spoke Spanish?
Yes, Sergeant Jeff Fink speaks Spanish.
And does Officer Fink ask him if that was on 385th Avenue?
Yes, he did.
And what did the defendant respond?
Mr. Rivera confirmed that it was.
Confirmed that he had seen Mollie Tibbetts on 385th Avenue?
Yes,
You told us that he jogged towards her and that a cell phone was used. Is that correct?
that is what he said. Mr. Rivera said that she made the attempt to use the cell phone, later telling me that she told him that she was going to call the police.
And what was the defendant's reaction to Mollie Tibbetts' threat to call the police?
Mr. Rivera said that he got angry.
Did he indicate that there was any type of physical altercation?
After he stated that he got angry, he stated that they started fighting.
Was he any more specific at this point as to what the fight was?
He said that Mollie tried to slap him and was screaming at him.
Did this make him angry?
Mr. Rivera said that this is when he became angry.
Now, what is the next thing that Cristhian Rivera told you that he remembers while he was on this road with Mollie Tibbetts?
So once Mr. Rivera told me that he got angry and he remembered them starting fighting, he stated that usually when he becomes angry or when he gets mad, he blocks out. So the next thing that he told me was that he remembered him driving and looking down into his legs and finding the earbuds that belonged to Mollie. And that is when he remembered that he had Mollie in the back of his vehicle in the trunk.
He did not tell you that he remembered putting her in the trunk.
He stated that he did not remember putting her inside the car. He did not remember how she got there, but he did remember how he took her out of the vehicle.
Okay. But he did remember her being in the trunk.
Yes.
And where were the earbuds at specifically in his car? Where did he just Mollie's or the earbuds he described? Where did he put them?
He stated that he was driving, looked down on his legs. That's how he put it. And that's when he saw them.
Did the defendant indicate to you where he took Mollie Tibbetts?
Yes, at the location where we were at.
To a cornfield?
To the cornfield.
Does the defendant describe at this point any injuries to Mollie Tibbetts' body?
He remembers that there was blood. He told me that he took her out of the car, put her on top of his shoulder, carried her inside into the cornfield, laying her down, covering her with corn leaves, and leaving right away.
Is he specific at all concerning the injuries to Mollie Tibbetts as to what part of her body those injuries were located?
At one point, I asked him, was it the head that it was bleeding? Was it the forehead? He stated he, with his hand, in motion, the neck.
So did he actually say the neck, or did he just point to his neck?
He stated and he pointed to the neck.
Did he describe for you how her body felt when he carried her?
Yeah.
I asked him how
That's
the
why I was
body
asking
felt,
why
getting
is
his body when he was carrying her. He told me that it felt like a person that had just fainted.
After 2 Miranda. The defense still tried to have it
Did the defendant ever tell you
withheld.
or remember for you any weapon that was used to cause the injuries to Mollie Tibbetts that would have caused her to bleed?
No, did not.
He couldn't remember it.
He could not remember.
Is it fair to say, Ms. Romero, that in your conversation with Cristhian Rivera roadside at the cornfield, that the recall by the defendant was not complete?
Yes, I was trying to get more details from him.
And it was not complete in terms of he never discussed a weapon that was used to harm Mollie Tibbetts.
That is correct.
He did not provide you turn by turn a drive that he took to the cornfield, correct?
Correct.
And there may have been some other details left out. Is that right?
Yes, that's what I was understanding.
Did the defendant provide you any information concerning the condition of his clothing?
Yes, he told me that he had no shirt on because it was stained with blood.
I'm sorry, I didn't.
He had no shirt on because it was stained with blood, or
Yeah,
it could
no-
be bloody
He had no shirt on at what point?
when he was carrying her inside the cornfield.
After he covers Mollie Tibbetts with corn leaves, did he leave
Yes,
right away?
he said I left right away.
You asked him again in this part of the interview concerning putting her in the car. Do you recall that?
Yes,
He doesn't remember putting Mollie Tibbetts in the vehicle, but remembers taking her out. Is that accurate?
that is accurate.
After going through this statement with the defendant, did you press him then for more details?
Yes, I did.
Because of those gaps that we just mentioned, is that right?
Yes,
Did you want to get all of the information that you could possibly get from
Yes.
the defendant?
yes,
That was your goal.
that was my goal.
Did you ever then confront him by asking him if you ever, did you ever then press him then on more details? How did you go about doing that?
Yes, so I went to ask him, Mr. Rivera, please just let me know, give me more details, how she got into the car, what happened to her, what did you do to her? His answer was, I brought you here, didn't I? So that means that I did it. I don't remember how I did it.
So he tells you that you were pressing him for more details.
Yes,
He tells you that he brought you all the way out to her.
yes,
So that means I did it, right? It was a question. Is that correct?
that is how he's put it. Yes,
And then he follows that with, I don't know how I did it. Is that correct?
that is correct.
Did you press him at one point on more details by asking him what changes?
He goes, nothing changes. I brought you out here. And then he restates what he told me earlier.
All right, and towards the end of this interaction with the defendant, you come back to asking him about being scared when Mollie Tibbetts threatened to call the police. Is that right?
Yes.
What was his reaction, or what was his answer to that particular statement?
He said that he got scared, but he got angry too.
He was angry about her threatening to call the police.
Yes.
Did you ask him after this happened? Did you think about it?
Yes.
What was his answer to that?
He goes, not really.
And you asked him, when people were looking for Mollie Tibbetts, did you ask him, what were you thinking?
Yes.
What was his reaction to that?
I remember he just shrugged his shoulder and he goes, I didn't think about it.
Did he say that he felt bad?
No.
Did he say that he blocked out everything or tried to?
The part where he got angry, yes.
This interaction with Cristhian Bahena Rivera at the roadside, Ms. Romero, lasted how long in the car?
Again, I don't have exact times, but it was probably an hour or so.
Okay. And at any point in time, did you go back into the cornfield to observe the area where Mollie Tibbetts had been found?
No.
He didn't confess to actually unaliving her. He just said he forgot, or he blocked it out. So, yeah.
Ms. Romero, just to finish this up, did you drive back to the sheriff's office with the defendant?
Yes. No, not with the defendant.
Okay, but you went back.
Yes.
The man that you just recounted these statements that he gave to you on August 20th and 21st, is he seated here in the courtroom?
Yes, he is.
Please point to him and describe what he's wearing.
He is right there, and he is wearing a light blue shirt with a gray dress pants.
Your Honor, the record should reflect that Ms. Romero has identified the defendant, Cristhian Bahena Rivera.
Record will so reflect.
That's all I have. Thank you.
Members of the jury, let's take a 10-minute recess at this time. Want to remind you of your admonition.
Yeah.
You can leave your notebooks where they
I'll go
are.
and change.
And again, we'll be back in about 10 minutes. And Ms. Romero, you may step down also, of course. Bahena and the attorneys of record are all present. Mr. Romero, Ms. Romero, I'll remind you, you're still under oath. And with that, Ms. Fries, you may cross-examine.
Ms. Romero, you said that Mr. Bahena made a statement that kind of gestured a slitting of a throat. Is that correct?
My mistake. It was not the slitting of the throat. It was just more of a sign. Like he went like this through to the neck.
All right. And so what did you understand him to mean when he did that?
I was asking him if where there was blood, either head, forehead, and I myself went head, forehead, which he said neck, and he went like this.
So my client specifically said that there was blood on her neck. Is that right?
That is what I understood from him. Yes.
And from what you understood was that her neck was bleeding. Is that correct?
No, at the time he just said that there was blood in the neck, and that's how I took it.
You understand that her injuries are not consistent with that.
I was not aware of the injuries.
You don't know anything about the injuries in this case. Is that right?
I know what the information that they have given me, yes, but not any details or anything in particularly.
That would be a different area for someone else to testify to. Is that right?
That is correct.
Someone that has expertise in what her injuries were. Is that correct?
Yes.
But from what Mr. Bahena said is that there was blood specifically on her neck. Is that right?
When I asked him again, was there blood in the head, forehead? He's pointed to his neck like this, and he said in the neck.
And when he pointed to his neck, he had his thumb and his forefinger around his neck as if someone was being strangled.
Again, he just said that. I did not think of cut, strangle, or anything like that. I just was trying to understand where he saw the blood.
You've pressed my client many times for more details. Is that right?
Yes.
You told him several times that you didn't believe that he didn't remember these details. Is that right?
I did not told him that I did not believe him. I told him that I understood if he had that condition. I even remember saying that that could be a condition when someone blacked out. But no, I do not recall saying that.
But as far as what exactly happened, whether a knife was used or some sort of an object, you just don't know. Is that right?
That is right.
And that's because my client did not give you that information. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Now, he did lead you to the body. Is that right?
Yes, he did.
And what he did is he said, this is where this happened. Is that right?
He showed me the cornfield, and he goes, this is the cornfield where I came, took her out of the trunk, carried her on my shoulder, went inside the cornfield, dropped her on the ground, covered her with leaves, and I left right away.
Now, you were very clear to him that you wanted more information. Is that right?
In the car, yes, when I was doing the interview, I wanted more details. I was trying to have him remember what happened between the time that he stated that he did not remember how she got in the car, but he remembered when he took her out of the car.
Now, he wouldn't provide you with those details. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And specifically, when he asked or when you were pressed for details, he said, I brought you here, right?
He kept restating that, yes, I brought you here, didn't I? I brought you here, didn't I?
And another thing that he said to you is what changes? Is that right?
Yes.
He knew at that. Many hours before he was detained on an immigration hold. Isn't that right?
He was detained around 11:30 p.m. at night.
And when he was talking to you at this cornfield, that was approximately 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning. Isn't that right?
We left the office at 4:30 a.m.
And he knew once you were there that he was going to be arrested for her homicide. Isn't that right?
At that time, when the 11:30 interview with the ICE agent, at that time he was under custody.
And specifically, though, ma'am, between 5 and 6 in the morning, when you were at that cornfield, he has brought you to the body. He's led you in the cornfield. Isn't that right?
That is right.
And he knew that he was going to be placed under arrest for her homicide. Isn't that right?
What he was thinking, I'm not sure what his thoughts were.
He had no reason to believe that he wasn't going to be held accountable. Isn't that right?
I guess not.
And you asked him for more details,
Yes.
right? And he was simply unwilling to give them to you. Is that correct?
Again, I will not say the word unwilling. He kept stating that when he got angry, he blacks out. So I'm not sure if he was not willing to do it or he was just describing a condition that he had. Again, it's not my area.
Now, you're trained in interview techniques. Is that right?
I received, like I stated earlier, 16 hours of the CTK class.
Have you ever heard of the term false confession?
I was
exactly.
taught in one of the classes of the training, yes.
Explain for the jury what a false confession is.
Must
I
have jogged his
would try,
memory.
but I will not be able to do that because I don't have the knowledge of what it is exactly.
Explain
bad.
what you were trained at the interview technique schools that you were at.
I do not remember going into details with the false confession. My training was direct in how to direct an interview, how to do rapport building, how to go ahead and get to know the person that you're interviewing, how to conduct the interview and manage like that.
Now, ma'am, you have some very some very reputable skills that I would assume, given your dual language, is that you did interviews quite a lot in your capacity as a law enforcement officer. Is that right?
It all depends what you mean quite a lot. I started my career with law enforcement, and I was doing this for 2.5 years almost at the time. So I was still brand new to all of it. And I was, yes, conducting interviews in a small town of West Liberty, which there were not a lot of interviews to be done. It all depends what a lot means to you.
It's generally known. It was
Yeah.
generally known in the community
And
that
this
you
truck is
were
for
an
7 days.
Spanish speaker. Isn't that right?
That is correct, yes.
And so, if there was someone that was
How
investigating a
many did they
case
have?
involving someone that spoke Spanish,
For the
they would
Sun
often
Mountain.
bring you in to
Thank you.
assist. Isn't that right?
Yes.
And have you ever been asked to assist in another jurisdiction, such as this case?
No.
All right. Now, ma'am, I want to talk to you a little bit about report building. That's something that you've learned at the
Yes.
academy?
Yes, a little bit of in the academy, but again, the report building skills that I learned were mostly at the CTK classes.
Specifically, what is rapport building?
Again, just getting to know the person that you're talking to, anything about family, history, employment, anything that we can go ahead and get out of the assessment.
And it sounds to me like you talked to my client for about 2 hours just doing general rapport building.
Again, I do not recall the exact times, but yes, the interview was long.
You did speak to him about a number of different things. Is that right?
That is right. We spoke about family. He gave me a list of uncles and aunts.
You talked to him about his employment and where he worked. Is that right?
Yes, that is right.
You also talked to him about how often he worked. Is that correct?
Yes.
And he talked to you, and ma'am, I do have your not your transcripts, but the transcripts there if you'd like to look at them. But he talked to you about how often he worked at the dairy farm. Is that right?
Yes, he did.
He told you that he worked long hours. Is that right?
7 days a week. Yes, 5 to 5 sometimes.
All right. And so he goes
So
to
that
work
gives
at
him
5
additional
o'clock in the
steps,
morning.
huh?
Is that correct?
That is correct. That's what he told me.
And then he would leave work at 5 p.m. Is that right?
Yes, he said the 12-hour shift.
And he would work 7 days a week on his on week. Is that right?
Yes, he told me that there were some every other weekend or something like that he was off.
So generally, there would be 1 week that he would work every single day, 12-hour days. Is that right?
That was my understanding when I spoke to him.
And then the next week, he would have 2 days off. Is that right?
He said every other weekend, so yes, that's what I understand.
And that second week, so he'd work 5 of the 7 days. Is that right?
I did not ask what week he was on at that particular time, so I'm not sure.
Well, let me ask you a better question for you. Generally, if it was a 2-week period, he would work 12 of the 14 days. Is that right?
Yes.
And so I understand you don't know about what days were off, but he would work he would work 12 hours a day, 12 of the 14 days a week. Is that right?
And he told me he went in at 5 a.m.
Is he stalking
out at
her?
5 p.m.
You didn't have anything to dispute that. Is that right?
No.
He
I
talked
saw it
to
was
you
the corner.
about his family in the area. Is that right?
Yes.
You were able to connect to
All right,
him
I'll mute myself
that
now.
he both immigrated here to the United States. Is that right?
Yes.
You told him that you immigrated here when you were 10, right?
Yes.
And he said that he came to the United States when he was about 17.
Yes, if I recall correctly, yes.
Did he tell you the area or the township that he was from?
Yes, he did.
Where was he from?
I do not recall the name of the town, but he was from the south part of Mexico. The state, I believe it was Guerrero.
That's what I thought was the town. So it sounds like you're following this better than me. Did you ask him about his parents and if they're still alive?
Yes, I did.
And did he tell you where they were?
They said that they were both in Mexico.
So they were still in Mexico in Guerrero. Is that right?
Yes.
Did you ask him about if he had any siblings?
Yes, I did.
And did he tell you about his family?
Yes, he did.
And what family did he have other than his parents in Mexico?
He, well, in Mexico, I do not recall anymore besides the parents, but I believe he mentioned a brother or sister. But we mostly focus on the family that he had here and around the area.
All right. And my notes, and I don't think I want to make you go through the interview here, but it is that he had 2 siblings, but your understanding is he had a sibling or 2 that were still with his parents. Is that right?
That was my understanding, yes.
He also told you that he's building a house in Mexico. Is that right?
Yes, he did.
And how is it that one works in Iowa, 12 out of 14 days of a week and still is doing that in Mexico?
again, everybody, I don't know how he is doing it. The things that I know is that that's what a lot of immigrants do. That is what my parents did. We came here for a better life, and we were building a house, meaning that someone does the construction work while you send money to them.
And it's not unusual for someone that is an immigrant in this country to still be sending money home to their family. Is that right?
That is right.
And is it unusual for a family to be separated where, part of the family immigrates to the country and the other part of the family stays there?
That's not unusual
Why would a family do that?
because of their immigration status.
Now, with Christian, him sending money back to his family to take care of his family, is that something that's unusual?
No,
Now, the money that someone can make in the United States versus in Mexico, is that significant?
I will say so. To be honest, I came here when I was 10, so I do not have any knowledge of how much money you can go ahead and make in Mexico.
All right. But he told you that he was working here so that he could send money back to his family. Is that right?
That is what he said.
He also talked to you about what he did on his time off, his 2 days out of those 14 days. Is that right?
Yes,
He said that he had a young daughter, a 3-year-old. Is that right?
yes.
Her name was Paulina.
I do not recall the name.
Did he tell you that he spent time with this child?
Yes, he stated that he drove down to the Cedar Rapids area where she was living with the mother, and that he used to bring her over to Brooklyn.
So his daughter would stay with him, those 2 days out of the every 14 days. Is that right?
He stated I would go and get her during the weekends that I'm off.
All right. Now, my client also talked about his family that is in the Iowa area. Is that right?
Yes,
And specifically, he told you that he chose the location that he did because he had uncles in the area. Is that right?
yes,
He told you that he had uncles in Tama County. Is that right?
yes.
I think he said he had 4 different uncles in Tama.
I do not recall the number, but yes, there were quite a few.
He also told you that he had a family in Brooklyn. Is that right?
Yes,
It sounds to me like he had some aunts that would take care of him and kind of cook food for him when he had a lunch. Is that right?
that is right. He stated that the uncle's wife was the one who prepared his food.
He also showed you a picture of his daughter. Is that right?
No, I do not recall that.
You don't recall him showing you a picture of his daughter?
No, I do not remember that part.
If I showed you a copy of your transcript, would that assist with that?
Yes.
All right. May I approach? If you could turn to, and this is 170434. If you could turn to page 10. This is yours. Now, ma'am, this was over an 11-hour. This was over an 11-hour interview. Is that right?
That is correct.
And I'm not expecting you to remember every single detail. But it does say that it does show that you asked to see a picture of his daughter. Is that right?
I'm not seeing where I asked him to show me the picture. I was asking him for the cell phone number.
Okay.
And right now, when you see my cell phone, I have in the background my own baby. And that is what I saw in his cell phone. He did not show me the picture like this. And when this is my daughter, it was just in the background of the cell phone. And I asked, is that your daughter? He said, yes.
All right, that makes sense. So because it talks, and I don't have it right in front of me, I can bring it up, but there's some sort of a statement that you say, oh, that's your daughter. Is that right?
Yes.
And then you say, oh, she's cute. Is that right?
Yes.
So you didn't ask to see a picture of his daughter. Is that right?
No, I remember I did not even recall saying, hey, show me the picture of your daughter, or him going like this. It was in the background of that cell phone.
It's just that you happened to see it when he was looking at his cell phone. Is that right?
Yes, because my pen was not working correctly, and he actually let me borrow a pen.
All right. So after the rapport building that happens, and we talked about some of the things you talked about, but you got to know him fairly significantly. Is that right?
Yes, we believe. I believe that we spent time talking.
The next thing, you did talk to him some about his status. Is that right?
Yes.
And we already talked about he came to Mexico when he was 17. Is that right?
Yes.
You talked to him about how it is that he's able to, I guess, function, in the United States without a legal status. Is that right?
Yes.
And my client didn't make any sort of statements or try to represent to you that he was legally in this country. Is that right?
No.
He was very upfront with you that he was here illegally. Is that right?
Yes.
He was brought here when he was 17 and he's just remained. Is that correct?
He told me that he had been in the United States for 7 years and 4 in Brooklyn.
One thing that you were very clear to him on the outset is that you were not here to investigate his immigration status. Is that right?
I do remember telling him a couple of times that I was not interested in his status.
And so specifically, you said you were worried about this girl's disappearance. You were not the immigration police. Is that right?
At one point, I did mention that, but not at the beginning of the interview.
Well, why don't you look at page 26 now?
Uh-oh. I don't like that sort of smarmy.
Is that right?
There's no lines there, so I think you're going to have to read the entire page.
Mr. Rivera says, well, when you apply, so you don't struggle. So I said, so you don't struggle, but you have registered at work. Mr. Rivera answers, yes, at work.
I'm not asking you to read it out loud. If you could just look at it yourself, I'd
Okay,
appreciate
sorry.
it.
So yes.
And you were very clear with him that you were not here to investigate his immigration status. Is that right?
Yes.
And he was very clear to you that he was in this country illegally. Is that correct?
He told me that he was using another name and social security number.
And specifically that he was working under the name of John Budd. Is that right?
Yes.
He talked to you about using that name. Is that right?
Yes.
He said that he has no credit cards, debit cards, or anything like that. Is that correct?
Yes.
Basically, he uses that name so that he is able to work.
Yes.
And then he cashes the check and operates with cash. Is that correct?
Yes, that's what he told me.
Now, the statement that you had about immigration, that you were not here to arrest him for immigration, you genuinely believed that at that time. Is that right?
Yes.
Now, there were people that were not in the interview room that were making the big picture decisions on the case. Is that right?
Yes.
How many other people were there working on that case from the FBI, DCI, any sort of law enforcement agency?
I'm not able to tell you that. I don't know.
From what you saw, were there more than 10 people?
No, that I remember. I mean, I do remember like 4 or 5 of them.
Well, you are aware that when my client was brought into custody, that his vehicle was also being processed. Is that right?
At the beginning of the interview, I was not aware of that.
You were made aware of that at a certain time. Is that right?
That is right.
And specifically, you were told at that point in time that there had been hair that was found in Mr. Rivera's vehicle. Isn't that right?
Later on in the interview, yes.
And explain to me, who told you that there was hair that was found in the vehicle?
I do not recall who told me that. I was going outside for breaks. I was gathering information and I was going back then to conduct the interview.
Well, at that time, you were made aware that my client's vehicle was being searched and was being processed by the Division of Criminal Investigation. Is that right?
Again, I'm not sure who was investigating the vehicle. I was aware that the vehicle was being investigated, but not sure who it was.
And I'm not asking you when, but at some point in time during that night, you became aware that simultaneously, as my client's being interviewed, his vehicle is also being processed. Is that right?
That is right, yes.
And one of the things that you were told was that there was hair that was found in that vehicle. Is that correct?
Yes.
And it was believed that that hair may be from Mollie Tibbetts. Isn't that right?
I do not recall telling him that it was from Mollie Tibbetts. I believe I told him that there was hair found, but the information that I got from the outside, but I did not mention Mollie Tibbetts.
You went in and you confronted my client saying that there was hair found in the vehicle. Is that right?
I informed Mr. Rivera they were telling me that there was hair found in the vehicle.
And you essentially were saying, hey, explain this. Is that right?
Yes, which he stated that it was hair from his daughter.
You later found out that the statement or what you were told was not true. Is that right?
Later on, again, I do not recall that.
All right. So
I did not. People were not there telling me, yes, this is true, this is not true. Was given the information, going in there, conducting the interview.
right. So it would be for this jury to listen to the evidence and to find out if hair was actually found in the vehicle. Is that right?
That is someone else's part to explain.
But one of the things that you confronted him with is that there was hair in his vehicle. Is that right?
I informed Mr. Rivera that there was hair.
And as far as the immigration, what you told him, it turned out to be a lie. Is that right?
No, it wasn't a lie. I was not there for immigration status. I was not there to ask him about his status at all. I was there again to conduct an interview, and that's what I did.
One of the tactics you were taught to use is to present a suspect with information that ties them to the crime. Isn't that right?
Well, I think we found out
And
dipshit
sometimes
fucking award for
investigators
this
use false
trial.
information to present to the suspect. Isn't that right?
Yes,
Someone find out her name.
And the information that you told him that you were not worried about his immigration status, that changed at 11:30 p.m. Isn't that right?
that did not change because I was not interested in his immigration status.
Well, at about 11:30 p.m., he was placed in custody
Now, so that's
for
two votes.
immigration.
By
Is that right?
ICE agents, correct.
Okay, so a break was taken in the interview, and he was put in custody for being illegally in the United States. Is that right?
That's what I understood at 11:30. Yes.
My client had just gotten off of work or was finishing the day at work when he was brought in. Isn't that right?
I'm not sure. I was not given that information.
Well, that's what he told you.
He told me that he was at work when they went to talk to him.
And the interview started at about 5 o'clock p.m.
Approximately 17:06,
And 17:06 would be 5:06
5:06
p.m.
p.m.
So that would be approximately the end of his day at the dairy farm. Is that right?
With the information that he gave me, yes.
And that interview continued through the night. Isn't that right?
Yes.
So he was given breaks, but he was essentially in a small room at the sheriff's office from 5 p.m. at night until 4:30 the next morning. Is that right?
Yes, that was an 11-hour interview with approximately 8 to 9 breaks that he was given. He was given food. He was given breaks to use the restroom. He was given number of breaks to just be by himself. Yes.
His family came and asked to talk to him. Isn't that right?
I'm not sure what the family asked. I was told that there was family out in the lobby, and I went outside to talk to them.
So you talked to his family. Were you able to get their names?
No, I was not.
There were 2 people there. Is that right?
I recall seeing 3 of them there.
When you talked to them, you suggested that they go home.
I told them that I wasn't aware of how long this was going to go ahead and go for, that it was late, that if they wanted to go home, that they could.
Did you ever offer them a chance to speak with my client?
No, I did not.
Did you ever tell my client that his family was there to speak with him?
Not to speak to him. I made Mr. Rivera aware that he had family out in the lobby.
You made him aware that he had family out in the lobby.
Yes.
If my client says that you never made him aware that he had family out in the lobby, you disagree with that?
It was recorded, so it will go ahead and be in the transcripts.
All right, so you believe that it's in these transcripts somewhere?
Somewhere, yes.
All right. Did you offer him a chance to go speak with his family?
No.
You just told him that they were there.
At the beginning of the interview, I told him he had his cell phone with him. I told him he was free to go whenever he wanted to. He continued to stay. He continued to talk to me.
At some point in the interview, you talked to my client several times about helping himself. You recall that?
The word help, it's translated in a different concept in Spanish. So I'm not sure what you are referring to when I said help.
And so you believe that the transcript is wrong, is what you're saying, or?
I'm not saying that it's wrong, but in my opinion, there are parts that me being a fluent Spanish speaker, I will say that they're not translated the correct way, but that is just my opinion.
All right, Captain Birdseye. Tomato, tomato, lady.
Ma'am, these transcripts, first of all, they've been authored by the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement. Is that right?
That's what I was told. Yes.
So that's their translation. Is that right?
That's what I was told. Yes.
And what you're saying is that their translation is not what you believe the translation is?
In my opinion, again,
Yes,
there are parts
she
where
would've said
I
ourselves.
believe we're not translating the correct way, and the reason I'm saying this is
She would've
because
loved
of
to
the
have-
video and reading what they translated.
Would it be fair to say that there's different dialects of Spanish?
Yes.
To waiting for 8.5.
Explain that to the jury.
There are different words that you can go ahead and use to describe something. Like there are parts of Mexico that when you say cookie, it could for others it might be like slapping someone in the face. So it's different words that describe different things. It's just hard to explain.
So,
And so my client, he's
Unanimous.
from Guerrero, Mexico. Is that right?
Guerrero, Mexico, yes.
You say it much better than me. Where are you from in Mexico?
I'm from the north side. I'm Durango.
What is, as far as dialects, can you give this jury any information on different dialects?
Not really, but I do understand that there's different forms that we talk. Just like anywhere in the United States, if you are from the north, if you're from the south, you can go ahead and have different
Yeah.
accents, different dialects, and that is the same way that it's happened in Mexico.
And for example, using the term hey, or hello, are there different ways to say that depending on where you are from?
Yes. It would be like saying soda or pop. I mean, in the United States, it's just different.
All right, so let's go to page 11 first, and I'll give you a little bit of direction.
What number of the transcript?
It is 2027-35.
yeah.
It's about towards the middle, and I don't want you to read it to me, but let me know when you've had a chance to read the phrase. I think
Yeah.
you use help 2 different times.
I don't think he was grieving that hard, to be honest. He was second politics.
Yes.
And what you say is, you can help me understand so you can help yourself.
Yes.
And at that point, you're, I guess, suggesting that you are able to help my client. Isn't that right?
No, that's not the way that I see it. When I said help me understand in Spanish, it would be ayúdame a comprender. Help me understand what you're trying to say. It's like talking to a kid in school. Help me, guide me to what you are saying. So that is the meaning of the word help in there.
And you use that phrase multiple different times. You say, let's help each other out. We're here to help each other out. You agree with me on that. Is that right?
That is correct.
Another thing you say, and I mean, I can go through the different transcript places, but you're telling me that we're here to help you out. That's another phrase that you used several times, ma'am. You recall that?
Yes.
And
What's wrong with that?
at that point, you say, we're here to help you out.
Yes.
Aren't you telling my client that you're there to help him?
Basically, what I'm saying what I mean with that is I am here to hear you out, to see what you have to say.
You say that you're telling him that, but that's not what you said. Is that right?
Again,
What's the
it's
difference?
just difficult to explain in Spanish because when you say it in Spanish is, I'm going to go ahead and talk Spanish, but it's just ayúdame a entenderte, ayúdame a comprender. So, okay, yes, but I'm going to go ahead and translate what I said. So help me understand, help me. Again, I was trying to get the information that he needed to tell me.
Okay, so it'd be fair to say that these transcripts, you don't agree with everything that is said in here. Is that right?
Again, it's not that I don't agree. It's just that in my opinion, because I believe, again, different dialect, different words being used, it's just not the way that I will translate it myself.
Would you agree with me that if you were to translate it yourself, it would probably be about 10% inaccurate?
I will not say that, but I will be able to understand it better, yes.
All right, you think that you would be able to explain it better. Is that right?
That is right.
And someone, and again, it looks like it's transcribed by a Kathy Yanez, but someone has a disagreement with you on how this translation would read. Is that right?
What do you mean by that?
The person taking down this information takes it down differently than you would. Is that right?
Yes,
And that may be different from what my client would. Is that right?
it could be.
Another thing is that he's also being interrogated, and you'd agree with me that this was an interrogation, correct?
I do not agree with you on that.
Okay, well, he was a suspect here, is that right?
I did not make him aware that he was a suspect. I did not have anything to hold him as a suspect at the time of the interview.
How many times have you interviewed a witness for 11 plus hours, ma'am?
That was the first time, yes.
All right, and in this case, he was not only interviewed for 11 plus hours, he was interviewed right after he finished a long day at work, is that right?
Yes, that was the understanding.
And he's not somebody like you and me that goes and sits at a desk all day, correct?
With the job description that he gave me, he was not.
He's cleaning pens, is that right?
Yes,
He's scooping poop.
yes.
He's on his feet or some other machinery all day, is that right?
Did not ask him that.
All right.
I'm
well,
guessing.
This man, he works a tough job for 12 hours a day, 12 out of the 14 days a week. Isn't that right?
That is what he told me, yes.
And then he's brought in and he is questioned from you on and off for 11 plus hours. Isn't that right?
The interview went for 11 hours, yes.
And it was not until the very end, the last couple of hours, that he was willing to give you really any information. Is that right?
That's not the way that I took it.
Okay. He agreed that he saw her out running. Is that right?
Yes,
But other than that, he did not give you any significant information until the last couple of hours.
he did give me information.
Okay, what information did he give you?
It will be recorded in the transcripts.
Okay, that's fair. This man fell asleep multiple different times during this interview. Is that right?
Not to my knowledge, no.
Well, he was given breaks. Is that right?
Yes,
And during those breaks, he fell asleep multiple different times.
I was not aware of that.
So you don't believe that my client fell asleep during this interview?
I did not see him fall asleep during the interview.
And you disagree, noticing that he was tired?
I do not disagree with you. At the end of the interview, he looked tired, I looked tired, everyone was tired.
Well, let's turn first to $2027.35. And if you could go to page 15. Okay. And I'm sorry, go to page 21. If you could read, it's about 10 lines in. Do you recall, ma'am, and just to be clear, this transcript at 2027:35, that deals with the military timestamp, is that right?
Yes,
So that would have been at 8:35 at night that night, is that correct?
yes,
So about 3 hours into the interview.
okay.
And at that point in time, it appears that you're walking back into the room, is that correct?
Yes.
And what is it that you acknowledge to my client?
I said you fell asleep?
And so do you recall walking back into the room and seeing that he was asleep?
No, I do not recall that. I asked him because I took a little bit to come back.
What does he respond back to you?
He did not admit or anything. He just goes, mm-hmm.
In just a little bit.
Yes,
So you're telling this jury that you agree that you said that, is that right?
yes.
Or are you saying that it's an inaccurate translation?
No, I'm telling you that I do remember telling him that because I took a long time to come back from that break. And what I'm telling the jury right now is that at the time that I spent
Nah.
with Mr.
She's
Rivera,
attacking my
all
credibility.
that time, Mr. Rivera did not put his head down, did not act
That's
as
good,
if he was
that's good.
sleeping. When we were in the conversation, he was very engaged. He was answering the questions that I was making, and at no point I saw him sleeping.
All right, let's go to page 22 now, ma'am. It's the same transcript.
Unless they're going coercion.
And if you could read the last portion. And just let me know when have you had a chance to look at it, or do you need
Yes.
more time? And just to kind of, I guess, bring you to where you were in the conversation, he's talking to you about a date that he was supposed to have with a woman. Is that right?
Yes,
And he did talk to you about that he was supposed to have a date with a woman on July 19th. Is that right?
That is correct.
And you talked about it with him a little bit, that he had even bought the woman flowers. Is that right?
Yes.
He had arranged through his cousin to get flowers because he's working normally during the day. Is that right?
Yes.
He had said that he had cleaned his car so that it was ready for this date. Is that right?
Yes.
He said that he was going to take this woman to Des Moines to go out to eat. Is that right?
Yes.
He said that they had bet on a soccer game or something. Is that right?
That is right.
And he said that he lost, so he was buying. Is that right?
Yes.
And he told you that that date was supposed to be on July 19th of 2018. Is that right?
That is correct.
And what he told you is that that date never happened because the
Tornado.
Yes, the one.
I'm sorry. Both were speaking at the same time. What was the answer? Just the negative answer.
What was the answer you said?
Because of the tornado, he was not able to visit.
This woman, she lived in Marshalltown. Is that correct?
Yes.
And what happened to be is that this tornado in Marshalltown hit the day after Mollie Tibbetts went on this run. Is that right?
I do not recall.
Okay. But he said he was planning to take her on the date and this tornado hit at the same time. Is that right?
Yes.
So going back to this interview, you're talking about this different date and who bought the flowers and everything. Is that right?
Yes.
And at that point in time, you excused yourself so that he could eat. Is that right?
Yes.
And what is it that he says?
He goes, I am going to sleep here, question mark. So I can start making myself comfortable, right? That was a joking matter. I took it because he chuckled. And I said, no, don't get too comfortable.
All right.
I'll be right back.
And keep moving down the transcript, ma'am.
I told him, no.
You don't need to keep reading it, but go ahead and read it to yourself.
Okay. So where exactly do you want me to go from here?
If you could go to 24, page 24. And what's shown is that you go back into the room. Is that right?
Yes.
So you gave him a break. Is that correct?
Yes.
And at that point in time, you asked him how he was doing. Is that right?
Yes.
And my client told you that he was sleepy. Is that correct?
Well, I did not ask him. It was Sergeant Jump that made the question, how are you doing? And he responded, sleeping.
So at that portion of the interview, my client acknowledged that he was tired. Is that correct?
Yes.
If you could go to 220904, that's the next transcript. And so that would be about 10 o'clock at night. And I'm sorry, go to the next transcript. It'd be 2350. So that would be at 11:50 at night. And if you could go to page 2. And it's at the top of the page. So this would be at about 11:50 at night. Is that correct?
Again, I do not remember the exact times.
Well, the transcript would have been, it's labeled that it's 23:50:34, correct?
Yes.
So that would correspond with about 11:50, right?
Right.
And at the beginning of that transcript, you ask my client if he's sleepy. Is that right?
Yes, I said, are you sleeping, Christian?
And he says a bit.
Yes, his response was a bit.
Now I'd ask you to go to page 32. In the top of the page.
Yes.
At that point in time, you also ask my client, you say, you are sleepy, right?
Yes.
And he says yes.
And again, chuckles.
Now, ma'am, I guess I can show portions of the video if need be that my client's sleeping, but I want to make clear. So are you saying that he was never sleeping when you were in the room? Or are you saying that he was never sleeping?
I'm saying that he was never sleeping when I was in the room. He did not make any indicators. Whenever I make the question, as you can see, he chuckles, he jokes around with it, and again, engages in the conversation with me.
So what you're telling this jury is that he was joking around about being sleepy.
That's how I took it, not particularly joking around, but when you ask me a question, I answer it and I chuckle or laugh. To my interpretation, that will be that I'm not being serious.
So you don't believe that he's sleeping?
Again, he was not sleeping when I was making contact with him.
Ms. Freeze and Mr. Brown, go ahead to approach, please.
Where's Dad? Come on. Come on. Say hello. Say hello. Ooh, good boy. Good boy. Did this one get you? Yeah, he did.
The jury, that completes our service for today. I want to remind you of your admonition before I send you on the way. Make sure you're not discussing the case with anyone. Make sure you're not doing any type of independent research, and make sure you're not having any media exposure to.
Right then. Well, let's see. Well, there is one more, I think, 45-minute video, which we'll start off doing tomorrow before we head into day 3. All right. My apologies for not finishing it, but yeah, I need to go my nose. All right. Thank you very much for joining me again and for all your support. And you make sure you stay safe, stay warm, stay happy, healthy. And as I say, if you can't be good, be good at it. See you next time. Bye-bye.
Hey there, thanks for stopping in. We hope you will join us again. We all look forward to next time. We get to talk about true crime. Clues. Justice served in an honest fight. True crime tales till the verdict's right. Solving more than just trivial quests, with sentences rule and the defense rests. Our true crime family is great. All types of topics we debate. Smash that like and ring that bell. Hit subscribe, you might as well.